So thank you for joining the Security Center Transaction Finder webinar. We're going to help you reduce POS transaction noise to protect profits. A quick agenda on logistics. We're going to go over how retail security is evolving. We're going to introduce you to Security Center Transaction Finder. This will include a quick demo, and then we'll end off with some frequently asked questions. Please feel free to submit your questions throughout this webinar. We'll try to respond either in real time or after the webinar, we'll take some time to go over those. As for today's presenters, we have Rob Borsch, who is a Signature Brands practice lead, and myself, Carrie-Ann Beach, the industry marketing manager for Signature Brands. Now, this webinar is being recorded and it'll be shared with you after. Some key themes from today's presentation. The first is retail shrink is increasing, while loss prevention is expected to do more with less budget. You can save time and money by unifying your single-purpose tools and leveraging additional sensors, and ultimately we can help you work faster without incurring additional costs. So let's start by taking a look at how retail security is evolving. 41% of retailers admit that their inventory shrink is increasing. For those of you that are not familiar with this term, shrink is a loss of inventory related to theft, error, or fraud. Now, this is an alarming percentage. To get a sense of the cost, shrink has reduced retailers' bottom line by $46.8 billion across the industry. This is according to a 2018 NRF survey. At the same time, there's growing expectations for loss prevention to uncover more inventory loss, more cash loss, and more fraud loss with diminishing budgets. We're also seeing more retailers invest in frictionless shopping experiences, things like self-checkout, to meet changing customer needs. As I'm sure you're aware, customers expect the same seamless shopping experience in a brick-and-mortar location as they would if they were shopping in their own home. And retailers are trying to meet these needs by investing in SEO or scan-and-go technology. And this is undoubtedly having an impact on security. Rob, can you take us through some of these effects of frictionless shopping on security?
Sure, thanks, Carrie-Ann. So we want to share some data from you from a research study conducted by Dr. Adrian Beck, who is a professor at the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom. Many of you may know who Dr. Beck is. He is part of the ECR Shrink and On-Shelf Availability Group. He also does a lot of work through retail organizations in North America as well. So he had conducted a recent study looking at 13 retailers and had millions of transactions of data and found some very interesting statistics around what to expect when a retailer invests in a frictionless shopping experience. So first, fixed self-checkout, fixed FCO. In the retailers he studied, after a year of in the implementation phase, it was noticed that half of all transactions went through a fixed self-checkout terminal. When the adoption reached 50% of all transactions, those retailers experienced a 31% increase in their shrink. So obviously that's quite alarming. It's also not just the only impact that fixed self-checkout has. Yes, shrink goes up. Obviously, why retailers do it is it does reduce payroll. It also helps with that seamless experience that many shoppers come to expect. So it's certainly a risk. It's a large risk and a risk that the loss prevention team is often challenged to mitigate. The second area of frictionless shopping is scan and go. So scan and go could be defined as checking out or scanning merchandise with either a personal mobile device, through something like an app, or through a store-owned mobile device. The adoption rate of sales through this method is not nearly as high as a fixed self-checkout. Typically, what they've seen is 1% to 2% of all transactions go through a scan and go method versus 50% with a fixed self-checkout. So adoption is still low. But what is alarming is for every 1% of utilization, so in other words, If only 1% of all transactions go through Scan and Go, that retailer can expect, based on the study and research from the data, an 11 basis point increase in shrink. So obviously, as that begins to increase and the utilization of that type of checkout increases, shrink is going to increase quite dramatically. So this is really meant to show that, probably not a surprise to anybody on the call, but the more seamless and frictionless the shopping experience becomes, the more shrink that's going to occur, and the greater the need to have visibility into transactions and POS data is quite high.
Thanks, Rob. So how does this impact your retail investigations? How many hours does your team spend investigating POS transactions to determine if theft is occurring? Do you need to bounce between a variety of single-purpose tools like POS systems, exception-based reporting tools, and then identifying cameras to see if theft or fraud is occurring? And given the diminishing loss prevention budget, how do you work smarter without incurring additional costs? At the same time, what are you doing to keep up with frictionless shopping innovations? How do you utilize SEO tools to enhance the customer experience without hurting your bottom line, like Rob just said? So how a lot of retailers are adapting is you're connecting their POS system to an exception-based reporting system. So if you're not familiar with this term, exception-based reporting, these systems analyze POS data continuously, and they look for things like exceptions or anomalies, and they find outliers in regards to refunds, discounts, line or post voids, or other activities that might indicate problematic behavior, either on the part of the employee or on the customer side. Now, your EBR may or may not be integrated with your VMS. If there's no seamless integration already, you're likely exporting a long list of POS transactions out of your POS system, and then you're manually finding the associated video by retrieving the right cameras and keying in the time codes to see if there's any discrepancies between the receipt and then the associated video. If you do all of this and you realize there's no suspicious activity occurring, you'd then move on to the next one, having wasted all that time and energy on what were basically false alarms. Now, you may be doing this hundreds of times a day. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. How we're now helping you go further is we've embedded exception-based reporting functionality within Security Center. So what we've done is with the Security Center Transaction Finder, we've unified your POS data with the corresponding video and then embedded exception-based reporting abilities, all in one intuitive interface, which is Security Center. So you can now have your exception-based reporting search engine that's embedded within Security Center platform, and you have the ability to instantly validate suspicious transactions with the associated video to determine if further investigation is needed. And this is going to save you time and energy by filtering out the noise and allowing you to prioritize the truly suspicious behavior transactions. So this brings us to Transaction Finder. We'll have a short animated video that brings you through the tool. Hi, everyone, meet Peter. He's a retail investigator at Shopping Industries. Part of Peter's job is to investigate retail fraud and burglaries to protect profits. But Peter's job is not easy because he has a volume of point-of-sale transactions to sift through to determine where theft and loss is occurring. Part of detecting suspicious activity starts with exporting a large list of transactions out of the point-of-sale system and then manually finding the associated video by locating the right cameras and keying in the right time codes. He needs to do this to get more context from his video management system to determine whether certain transactions should be flagged for further investigation. There are simply too many transactions to review, and this makes it challenging for Peter to know where to prioritize efforts and how to best protect profits. Poor Peter. Fortunately, there's a better way. Security Center Transaction Finder unifies point-of-sale transactions, video cameras, and analytics into one intuitive interface. Instead of working with a variety of separate tools, Peter can now search for suspicious transaction behavior and immediately review the corresponding video to decide whether further investigation is needed, all within Transaction Finder. With embedded exception-based reporting capabilities, Peter can search for all refund transactions in the last week where there is no motion detected on the customer side of the registry. By only using Transaction Finder, Peter identifies suspicious transactions quicker and ultimately closes cases faster. Now Peter is happy. So what we saw there a little bit is that Transaction Finder provides everything you need for your POS investigations in one interface. This also means that you would only need to train your staff on one tool. So here is a view of what the interface looks like. Rob's going to take you through a demo with use cases very short after this. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can apply your criteria. So you can choose a cash or cashier, and you could filter down your transaction value, date, etc. It will show you all the transactions meeting that criteria, and you can sift through and select the transaction of interest. You can then immediately view the corresponding video tied to the POS transaction, and it'll also show you the itemized receipts that are being highlighted next to the video. So you can identify if there's any discrepancies. You can also save and share reports. So with that, I invite Rob to walk you through a demo.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. So we will start off with what does Transaction Finder in Security Center look like? We'll walk through a short demo here. So what you see here is the interface to Transaction Finder. What we're going to be doing here initially is viewing a transaction along with its corresponding video. So what you see on the left side of the screen are cameras, cash registers. There's a lot of other things since this is our demo system that we won't focus on. But cameras and cash registers are the primary entities that we will be using for Transaction Finder. On the bottom, we can create filters. I'll get into filters a little bit more and show you how to create some advanced searches and filter on your massive amount of POS data. For the sake of this demo, what I did was just pull the last 4 weeks of transactions. So there's going to be a lot of transactions for this one cash register. What you see in the top part of the screen are all the transactions. There's a lot of detail that goes along with that. That part of the screen is customizable if you don't want to see the location, the terminal, the time, the start time, the end time, all that. You can simplify that, or you can even add more data if you'd like. Once you see the transactions, you simply click on the transaction line, and what you will see is the video of that transaction on the bottom center part of the screen. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will also see a detailed itemized receipt. So as we play the video, you'll see that as merchandise is scanned, it'll appear on the receipt, and it'll be highlighted with what you see on the video at that point in time. So here we see merchandise being scanned and the payment method being conducted. Here we will go into what types of searches can you do. So when you select the data that you'd like to do a search on, many different fields become displayed, and you can start to build a search and filter, and you can do some advanced searches like string together more than one search, do some Boolean logic like and or, and start to combine some of these rules. So if you wanted to do a search on a certain type of transaction, say it's a refund, you can select all transactions that have a refund. Or maybe you only want to have a refund for a certain dollar amount. So for example, refunds over $30, $50, whatever your threshold may be. You can enter that as a field as well. What we'll do is move forward in the demo. And for this, we'll just put, we have reason to believe that the cashier, Stephen, maybe conducting some suspicious behavior. So we're just going to look at Stephen's transactions for the last hour. We pull up this transaction, and what we see here is a transaction where what is being scanned does not match with the video. So in other words, seems like there may be some suspicious behavior here. Perhaps Stephen is engaged in some sweethearting and is giving this person, who he may know, some free merchandise. So what we can do after that is, in this case, maybe we want to keep an eye on Stephen going forward and want to create a report that we can pull up and continue to review Stephen's behavior. So what we'll do is we'll save a report. We'll call it Stephen's Sweethearting, and it'll be saved as a task. So this is essentially creating an exception report, pretty simple and basic one. This would be for an active investigation. But you can save that and come back later. So when you come back perhaps the next day and you want to see what Stephen's been up to, there's a report waiting in your tasks that shows Stephen's transactions for the previous day, previous hour, previous time frame, whatever you decide that is. So here's where you can create exception reports and save them. So perhaps going back to our earlier example, you might want refund transactions over, we'll say $100. You can create that search, create those rules, and save that. Say you want to know those types of transactions over the last week, whatever the time frame is. You can save that as a task, and every time you come back in, you can go through and launch that report. When you launch that report, it'll automatically pull all the data that you're looking for and be ready for review. The other things that we can do are things like live monitoring. That's a unique capability within Transaction Finder. You can see live transactions as they occur. You can see what is happening, what is being scanned. You can also set up live alerts. So perhaps you want to be alerted to every time there's a refund transaction that's over $100. You can simply set up an event to action and create an alert so that you're notified when those types of transactions occur. The other thing that you can also do, and what you see on the screen right now, are you can have a different representation of what your store may look like. So instead of looking through the interface that we just previously saw, let's take a look at what it looks like to look through a map view. So here's a map of a store. What you see on the map are cash registers. You also see cameras, where they are, other entities like doors and alarms. And simply, this is a different view for what you might want to be looking at through your surveillance system. So let's move on to another advanced feature of Transaction Finder. So this gets into advanced correlations. So Carrie-Ann mentioned that earlier, that we have the ability to not only look at POS data, but other types of data, such as, in this case, video analytics. So on the left-hand side, we've set up, this is an exception report that we've already created. So when we pull it up, it's already there, and it displays essentially what we are looking for. In this case, we are looking for refund transactions greater than $100. And when those transactions occur, we want to know only those transactions that don't have customers present on the customer side of the cash register. So in this example, what we've done is installed a video analytic. It's a queue detector analytic. It is focused on a queue on the customer side of the cash register, and it is looking for no motion events. So when there's a refund greater than 100 and there's no motion in that queue box, it's creating an alert. So instead of having, say, 100 transactions that have occurred over the last week that may have a refund greater than 100, we're really only interested in the ones that have no motion. So in this case, instead of 100 transactions, there's only one. And let's continue the video or the demo and see what happens. So here it looks like Stephen has conducted a refund on a cellular router with $200, and it looks like he's taken $200 out and put it in his pocket. That may be the activity or the behavior that we're looking for. Next, let's move on to visual reports. So the other unique feature within Security Center Transaction Finder is the ability to create reports based on all this data that's coming in. Let's just focus on POS data in the store as an example. What we can do is reporting like how many transactions are occurring at each terminal, by employee, by type of transaction, any number of different scenarios you can create reports on. So what you see in the drop-down menu here is the type of reports that you would be able to display in Transaction Finder. So this store that we're focused on only has 2 registers, the main one and the self-checkout one. So let's just go ahead and do a pie chart, and we'll produce a report of that. So here it shows us that 60% of all transactions go through the main cash register, which Stephen had been working at, and 40% go through the self-checkout. What we can do in Security Center is create a dashboard that might have a report such as this or any other report that you might want to create. And what a dashboard can do is, instead of pulling up a Security Center and only looking at video cameras, perhaps you want to look at video combined with other types of data. Maybe they're reports, maybe they're widgets. They could be coming from different sources, different systems. And so you can create and customize your own dashboard so that when your operator is interacting with this interface, not only do they see video, transactions, they can see reports, and they can create other elements on their dashboard that they may want to view. So again, a unique feature within Security Center Transaction Finder.
Thanks for that, Rob. So we've touched upon this with Rob's demo, what Transaction Finder will do for you. So not only can you monitor, but you can also validate transactions by tying POS transactions with the associated video. So this allows you to conduct rapid forensic search. It's really saving you a lot of time from bouncing between systems. You can focus on exactly what you want to see and filter out the POS noise by applying the different criteria and validating the video, as we've just seen. And finally, this allows you to identify theft or fraud trends with the dashboards to help visualize what's going on in your stores. There's also some unique features that Transaction Finder can provide. Of course, a big one is going to be your single pane of glass to view all your investigations. You do all your best investigations within this one interface. No need to jump between systems. You can leverage live video monitoring and alerts, so you can view transactions in real time and create alerts or bookmarks for future investigation. And finally, those advanced correlations. So you can correlate multiple data sources, including ones that are beyond POS data, as we've just seen, like motion detection, to quickly flag refunds being made by a cashier where no motion is detected on the customer end. And with that, I'll invite Rob back to talk a little bit in more detail about these correlations, which were covered in the demo a little bit, reasons to choose Transaction Finder, and then what's next for this tool.
Sure, thanks, Carrie Ann. So we covered this already, but just to make it a little bit more clear, when we talk about these correlations, and we'll use the same example we have been using during the demonstration, is refunds. So in a traditional EBR system, or perhaps you have your own reporting system, perhaps one of the exceptions you want to be aware of is refunds over a certain dollar amount. In this case, we'll say $30. When you get that result, perhaps you'll have many lines and many transactions to review. In this case, let's say it's 78. Based on your current process, perhaps when you look at those 78 transactions, you need to go over to your video system, pull up the location, the register, and the time, and review that specific transaction. Or perhaps there's an integration that allows you to jump into your video system and then do that pull a little bit more seamlessly. So that's one way of conducting an investigation and on using exception-based reports. What we are doing with these advanced correlations is being able to refine that search to be more precise. So obviously 78 lines of data, there's a lot of false alarms in that, probably a lot of legitimate transactions. But what we're really looking for in this case is per potential internal theft behavior. If that's the case, usually what'll happen is there's not going to be a customer present, kind of like we talked about earlier. So what we're really interested in is those types of transactions. When there's no customer presence, we'll correlate the data with the video analytic. Instead of getting 78 lines of data, we'll only get 6. And when we get those 6 lines, the report is presented right in the user interface. All you need to do is click on that line and the video of that transaction will appear along with the detailed receipt next to the video. So really what we're focused on is trying to reduce false alarms, sifting through a lot of data, and providing a precise rule so that time can be saved in reviewing a video and starting an investigation. Another unique feature within Transaction Finder is the ability of Transaction Finder to communicate with another product of ours called Retail Sense. What Retail Sense is a web dashboard that ingests data from sensors like video analytics, and POS data and provides visual reports. So in this example, what we're looking at is point of sale conversion reporting. From Transaction Finder, Retail Sense receives point of sale transaction data. From video analytics, such as people counting at the door, it'll receive data with how many people have entered the store on a given day, given hour, given time, whatever time frame it is that you may be interested in. What we're able to produce then is a POS conversion rate. Conversion rate is a very important metric in retail, as you probably know. Every single online retailer knows their conversion rate on every single web page. They understand how many people visited a web page, and of those clicks to that web page, how many converted into a sale. It's a little bit more challenging to do that in a physical store environment where you do know how many sales you have, but you may not know how many people entered the store. You can do that with Retail Sense and Transaction Finder in that you'll be able to count how many people come into the store with a people counting video analytic and compare that to the number of transactions that have occurred in that store with Transaction Finder to give you a point of sale conversion rate. A couple other reasons to choose Transaction Finder. We talked about unification, and really what we mean with unification is everything is in one user interface. Doesn't mean you don't have to flip between systems, nor do you have to integrate systems. It's all unified. That helps lower cost from purchasing or maintaining multiple systems. It's all within one system. Because there's a lower cost and a more precise way to identify exceptions and conduct investigations, it not only increases the ROI from reduced cost, but also increased return because of that precise, the ability to have precise results. We talked a little bit about enriching reports through and having business intelligence tools like POS conversion through Retail Sense, or just the visual reports available within Transaction Finder, and also the ability to tap into more sensors such as video, RFID, EAS, and any other sensor that you may have in your environment.
So all this to say is that this is part of a broader perspective, and we want to help take you from data to outcomes. So you'd start with Transaction Finder, where you can ingest your POS data from your POS system and define your search criteria with embedded exception-based reporting. And then using Security Center and Omnicast, you can detect theft and then validate it with video. And then finally, you could go even further. We can help you export and share evidence with law enforcement with Genetec clearance. Now, at this time, Rob's going to go through some of the frequently asked questions, and we also invite you to put in some questions of your own if you have, or tell us a little bit about your experiences using POS systems. What we talked about before, are you spending your time bouncing between different systems? Do you have an integration? How seamless does it allow you to view video and then validate transactions with that video? And now I'll open the floor up to Rob.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. So a few questions, and as Carrie Ann mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to contribute those. We'll be able to read those and respond. But just to start off with a few frequently asked questions, can I leverage my existing point of sale system? So yes, you can. What is needed to ingest data from your point of sale system into Security Center is what we call a parser. So in other words, a way to interpret and map data from your point of sale system into Security Center. We just launched this product. We already have a handful of parsers that are available, and we're continuously developing new parsers. So if there's a point of sale system that you have in your environment that you would want a parser built for, we will do that so that we can read your POS data. How does this differ from the other Genetec point of sale integration? So over the last couple of years, we've had a point of sale plugin. You might have heard it referred to as POS plugin or something called MDF. That was our initial product. It still is, it still works. It does similar things, but it is a custom solution. So every time we've had one of our customers inquire about this, we basically built it for them, which is good, but also has some downsides, such as advanced capabilities we may do for one customer, we couldn't for another. So we productized the point of sale system in Transaction Finder. We've taken the best of all the systems. We've also built some capabilities such as the advanced correlation with our correlation engine. We also have a new rules engine to have the ability to have better searches. So it has certainly enhanced capabilities of point of sale, as well as productize something so that everybody can benefit from that. Which video analytics work with Transaction Finder? So currently we have Kiwi video analytics, such as the Kiwi people counter, Kiwi Q detector that can work with Transaction Finder. We also, being an open platform, work with a lot of different partners, a lot of different camera manufacturers, and we are able to use some of their analytics as well. So for example, today, one of our initial customers is interested in the access queue detector, and that is able to be used with Transaction Finder. Okay, let's see, we've had a couple questions come in. And if you have others, please, again, submit those. So the first question is, what are some other correlations other than customer not present that you're able to do? That's a good question. We are offering these correlations. We work on the correlation, we add the correlation to the product. The next set of correlations that we're focused on, there's two different sets that both address the area of EAS systems. So in other words, those towers that are used to deter and detect theft. When some unpaid merchandise goes out of the store, it beeps. So there's a couple areas we're focused on there. One is some of these systems have RFID data with them. So for example, if there's an alarm, typically without RFID, you just know that something unpaid went out, that potentially unpaid or not deactivated went out the door and the system beeps. With an RFID system, what you're able to do is understand what actually went out at the time of the alarm. The correlation that we're building is when an alarm occurs, what RFID tags or what merchandise went out the door at that time, and were any of those items purchased within the last 5 minutes? I think, we all know if in this business that there's a lot of false alarms with EAS towers. So what we're trying to do here is reduce those amount of false alarms and really only focus on the alarms that appear to be legitimate based on merchandise leaving that hasn't been paid at point of sale. So that can refine perhaps a search of 100 alarms down to 5 and give you a good start for your investigation. And then another correlation that we're focused on deals with the EAS detachers, a smart detacher, trying to understand how many detachments occur within a transaction versus the number of transactions that actually, or number of items that actually occurred in that transaction, to try to get a discrepancy to see if there are, say, 5 detachments that occur in a transaction, but there's only 3 items scanned. That would raise a red flag. And you'd be able to see video of that. Okay, another question. If we were interested in Transaction Finder, how would we start the process? A really good question. So a couple things. One, either contact your Genetec sales representative, your channel partner, or you can email transactionfinder@genetec.com and we can help guide you through that process. The first point would be just collecting some information on your system, and your point of sale system, so that we either know that we can reuse one of our parsers or build a new one. And then we'd also want to understand your use cases. Use cases such as, are you interested in live monitoring of point of sale? Is this for investigative purposes only? Is it centralized, or is it within each of your stores? Do you want to use this as an exception-based reporting system or as a supplement to your exception-based reporting system? There's a number of things that we would want to just understand so that we can ensure the proper delivery of Transaction Finder for you. But like I said, contact your sales rep, your channel part, or your system integrator, or transactionfinder@genetec.com, and we can point you in the right direction.
And I'll leave you guys with that. Have a good day. Thanks so much for joining.